Good morning, everyone. Welcome to INSPINAR, your inspirational seminar. INSPINAR is a 30-minute conversation designed to empower us all with the roadmap for a more peaceful and productive life. I'm your host, Dr. Nidhi Gupta. The topic for today's discussion is sleep is king and nutrition is queen. Yes, that's right. Sleep is king and nutrition is queen. Put them together and you have a kingdom. And to talk to us about sleep, nutrition, and all things in between, we have a phenomenal health and fitness coach, Wendi Irlbeck. Wendi is a performance dietitian, coach, and the CEO of Nutrition with Wendi. She is also a writer, speaker, and former college athlete. Wendi utilizes evidence-based science to create nutrition programs for athletes to optimize their performance, minimize health risks, and enhance recovery from training while focusing on injury prevention. She teaches them some very important life skills, the importance of sleep hygiene, stress management, and fundamental foods to fuel their performance. Wendi is based in Nashville, Tennessee, but provides on-site and international online coaching and speaking services. Wendi, welcome to INSPINAR.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Gupta. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here and speak with you. You've had some amazing guests before me, so I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Wendi. When we were planning our episode together on INSPINAR, you had mentioned, you briefly alluded to your journey growing up and overcoming failure and facing those who told you that you could not succeed in your attempts, in your ambitions to help others feel empowered. I'm curious to hear about your story. What's your story, Wendi?
Oh my goodness. Well, to try and keep it short, one thing I want to point out is I used to be super embarrassed that I failed my RD exam multiple times. And I think that's probably the most important thing is that all of it goes back to when I was a child, the fear of failure, the fear to not be perfect. And I think that that's something that not just athletes, but the general person experiences. Nobody wants to look like they're not doing well or that they're failing or falling behind. So I think for anyone that I speak with, anyone that I mentor, I'm always willing to share my story of, hey, when I was a kid, I had a lot of pressure to be great and to do things at a really high level. And that comes down to, my upbringing and my work ethic. But fundamentally, the most challenges that I faced was likely during my grad program. I had some professors, number one, that they just didn't encourage me in the ways that, I would have preferred. I had some really supportive professors, but I also had some that they told me that I wasn't going to, number one, pass my RD exam. I wouldn't match for an RD dietetic internship, which there was a 50% match rate back in 2017, and that's likely changed at this point. I was basically told that I would struggle, I wouldn't succeed, and I had that in the back of my head all the time. So, of course, going into finishing up my master's, doing all the things they said I wouldn't do, but then getting matched with a program. Throughout the program, I always had that fear in the back of my head, like what's going to happen when I have to sit down for my exam? Like I've been working my whole life for this. This is really scary. It was a second career for me to go back and get my RD because I was previously working in corporate wellness. So it's kind of a long story. I've had quite the journey, but to keep it short and sweet, that fear of failure followed me around for 4 years, essentially. So it was just putting a lot of pressure on me. And I just let that pressure kind of get to me. And I had successfully done really well with all the practice exams. But for whatever reason, I would get into that exam room to take my RD exam and I would literally black out. Like I don't even remember what would happen. So it took me a few times to understand that I was allowing the stress and pressure to get in the way of me regurgitating that information that I very well knew. And I don't think that if I would have passed my RD exam on the first try, that I would appreciate it as much as I do now, but then also being the compassionate, empathetic dietitian, coach, leader, as I do have an employee and she's amazing, but all of those experiences, the failure, and then also, I don't ever want to be one of those people that tells someone they can't do something. I want to empower people. I want to encourage them. I get really passionate about it because I have not forgotten any of those comments, whether it be from when I was a child or throughout my grad program or, even during my dietetic internship. We tend to remember sometimes the people that tell us we can't versus those that are pushing us along the way. So I think, I'm so vocal about it because I have this saying that it's never a no, it's just a not yet. And that we must embrace failure. We must embrace that struggle is going to apply that pressure that's going to make the diamond shine. And part of where I get my strength from is Jesus Christ. And when we look good, he looks good. And it's all to glorify him. I wouldn't be where I am today without God. He has been so good. And he helped me in that. Let me go back to that final attempt for my RD exam. I remember telling myself, I'm not studying, I'm just going to walk in there. I'm going to trust God. I'm going to give it to him. And if I'm meant to be a registered dietitian, I will allow him to take control. And I walked in, I passed the exam and walked out and just thinking to myself, oh my goodness, what a journey. And this is somehow going to be effectively used in my future life, although it hurts. But it just has made me who I am. And I know that I'm going to continue to fail. And with every failed attempt, right, it brings us closer to that success. So if anyone out there right now is struggling with goals, they're trying to pass their board exam, whether they be a medical professional or just trying to be something different, you can do it. Just take a deep breath and don't allow the fear of failure to paralyze you.
I love it when you said, Wendi, it's not about no, it's not yet. And in our day-to-day life, how often we tend to forget, as soon as we face that first no, we give up. We put everything away, our ambitions, our goals, and we don't want to look at them again. So thinking about not yet, keep going, not yet, that is so powerful. So let's dig into the question, and how do we make a case for athletes in particular, but everybody in general, that sleep is king and nutrition is queen? What does that mean to you and in the work that you do with your clients?
Thank you so much for allowing me to talk about this on a larger platform. Just because, so yes, I'm a registered dietitian, nutrition is important, but sleep is more important, Dr. Gupta, because sleep influences our appetite, our hormone, our function metabolically, our energy levels, our concentration. It affects everything. So what you do before you go to sleep, right, it's really important too, that sleep hygiene routine, which we coach our athletes and clients on. But fundamentally, the reason why I say sleep is king is because you could have all the healthy food prepared, you could meal prep, you could have the best intentions. But if you sleep less than 7 hours, you have a terrible night of sleep, you wake up, not going to eat the healthy food. Your brain is going to say, no, I want the high calorie, the high sugar stuff. You're going to completely bypass that plan and you're going to go hit the drive-through or you're going to go reach for the candy. That is very common. And that's why I say you need to dial in your sleep first, because when you get a good night's rest, you have better cognitive function, you have better focus, your hormones are not out of control. And you're more likely to make the more optimal decision, which is reaching for the eggs, the blueberries, the walnuts, or doing, that smoothie that you had planned beforehand. So that's in a nutshell why sleep is king and nutrition is queen.
And what are some of the sleep hygiene tips or tricks or guidelines or maybe some rules that you set for your athletes, that you must do this before you go to bed, or you must not do this before you go to bed?
Yes, I love that. So kind of the do's and don'ts. So one coaching philosophy that I have found that works really well is, number one, identifying people's why. What's their purpose? What are their goals, whether it be Susie Q, who just wants to be healthier, or John, who wants to be a better cyclist. It's identifying their why and then reminding them of that to help reinforce why they should put the phone away, put the computer away, put the email away, and go to bed. Because if they don't know why it's important for them to change their habits, it's very unlikely that they're going to do it. So what I always ask people is, would you get up at 5 a.m. to scroll social media or check your email? Some would say maybe, but most of our clientele, no. So if you won't get up early for that item, why would you stay up late for it? So that is one thing too, is kind of putting it on them of, oh, you're right, that's silly of me. Like, no, I'm not going to get up early and do that. So getting them to understand the implications of staying up late, not getting quality sleep, it puts them at risk for diseases, risk of injury, not thinking well if they have a big test the next day or a big meeting in the boardroom, helping them see that why, so that it reinforces, all right, it's 8:30, I've got to put my stuff away so that I have about 60 minutes prior to bed, that I'm not seeing that blue light, I'm not getting that stimuli, so that my brain can shut down hormonally, I'm ready, melatonin is being produced, so then I can get a restful night of sleep.
Excellent. That is very much my own passion, as you know, screen time and life technology balance. I always ask people to put away anything stimulatory about 60 minutes before going to bed. I advocate that they either read a book or just let their mind wander, just be bored. It's okay to be bored. We don't have to be afraid or fearful of boredom. Sometimes it's okay. And doing that makes the sleep so much more effective, so much more peaceful, so much more powerful, that by next morning you are feeling energized for a much better day. What do you say to people who might make a case for binge watching TV or for accessing social media before going to bed by saying that, oh, well, this is my way of relaxation, or this is the only time I get throughout the day to catch up on what is going on in rest of the world?
That's a great question. Before I answer that, I do want to just throw out to obviously your viewers that your programs on social media that you're sharing about the tips and resources are phenomenal. So I really do hope that your viewers utilize your toolbox that you provide them with for sleep and mental health. It's really great.
Thank you.
Yeah, so in regards to also the sleep hygiene, making sure that people are limiting their caffeine intake after 2 p.m., making sure that they're not eating a big meal right before bed as well, limiting their fat intake, alcohol, all of those key fundamentals people kind of forget about. I just want to make sure people know, like, oh, those are practical things I can start doing. But leading into your question to further answer it, a lot of people just have no idea what it's like to wake up rested. So I think it's a good experiment, right, Dr. Gupta? What we can do is say, all right, here's the thing, let's try this. If you've never done it before, do you know if it works? So what's the worst that's going to happen? Nothing changes, or you wake up feeling amazing. So having them do their own experiment, because what works for one doesn't always work for another, but actually have them, instead of binge watching that episode that makes them unwind, why not actually try the meditation, doing some light stretching, maybe some reading, doing a devotional, some sort of meditative practice. Just try it for 5 days, and then report back, how did it go? And obviously we all know the science, we know what's going to happen with that individual is maybe by day 3, 4, or 5, if they can commit to it, they are going to feel more relaxed, they're going to get better sleep, and they're going to say, oh, I wish I would have been doing this sooner. I had no idea that I could actually get this great of sleep. So I think a lot of people as well think they're just bad sleepers. They think that because naturally their body doesn't rest well, they don't get the quality sleep because genetically, right, they think that something's wrong with them. So until we create that environment for success, I don't feel people really understand, just like with fat loss or even muscle gain, what the parameters are. We give them the parameters, they try it out, they can report back what went well, what maybe they'll change and do differently. And that it wasn't our idea, right? It was their idea. So they feel great. They like it. They create that routine. They start, consecutively week after week, getting into bed earlier, putting away the electronics, maybe setting a realistic goal to say, let's watch this episode of our favorite show on the weekends instead. And then getting to bed early during the week so that you're not completely ridding yourself of enjoyment, but you're making some good changes that can support a healthier life. And again, going back to that emotional nugget of, you're telling me you want to achieve this, but you're doing this. So we need to figure out how we can achieve this, and your habits need to support the future you're trying to create.
Now, do you advocate, or is it okay for people to maybe do a little bit of exercise, maybe an hour, hour and a half before going to bed? Or does that tend to disrupt sleep as well? Or on the contrary, that actually brings your focus and attention together and helps you sleep? Or is it's different for different people?
It's a loaded question. I'm going to be honest. It depends. And I really don't know, but what is said in the literature, we do know that if you're, ramping up the body, you're creating that stimuli, it is going to be more difficult to rest, and to go to sleep. So that's why a lot of people do benefit from exercising, according to the circadian clock, between 2 to 4, especially when testosterone levels are higher, or in the morning because it wakes people up. So if you also understand that for many people too, like if you go do some sprints or high intensity interval training, that's not going to support good sleep because your heart rate, everything is increased. It'd probably be better for you to just do some light walking, limit any intense exercise after 7 p.m. And I'll tell my athletes or clients this too. I would rather you go to bed early than do a 20-minute junk workout that is going to also, again, consistency over intensity. It'd be better for you to get sleep and then wake up early and do that workout, right? It's one day maybe that you would miss it versus, 365 days. We really want them to look at the big picture. There are some people, to your point, Dr. Gupta, that can actually do, they could go run 3 miles about 7:30 and then go to bed at 9 o'clock. I think that, again, it's a very individualized thing, but most people, that's going to wake them up too much, and it's going to be really difficult for them to go to bed early enough. They're probably going to be tossing and turning to 11 or 12 o'clock, which is not ideal.
Which is not ideal at all. I often tell my patients, if you want to lose weight, go to bed on time. And they're quite surprised. They're like, wait, what? By sleeping more, we can actually lose weight? Like, yes, you can actually lose weight by sleeping more and sleeping good. It's that easy. So sleep more, lose weight.
I love that.
There was something else that you had mentioned in our earlier discussion, Wendi, that you believe that everyone has an athlete within them. And your truth is related to helping teens and adults channel their inner athlete to be their best selves. How do you do that?
It's a great question. Sometimes I ask myself, what are we doing? Because sometimes every day, what's really amazing is that everybody brings something new, a new question. Clients I've been working with for 2 years, every week they bring some new challenge, some new issue we have to tackle, which is really amazing, and it keeps me on my toes. I'm still learning so much, and I'm still evolving as a coach, but some fundamentals that have worked for me and also our team is just number one, meeting the person where they're at. What do you need right now? And asking them, like checking in with them. What is it that you're struggling with? What is it that you need from us to help you get past this plateau? And how can we channel that inner athlete in the sense of get fired up, get mad about it? Why is this happening? Maybe it's, somebody has a boss that's just throwing things at them at the last minute. It's the end of the day. They want to go home. They want to go work out. And all of a sudden the boss says, hey, can you do these things? And they're stressed out. So I say, let's channel that inner athlete and say, all right, let's control our controllables. We're in attack mode right now. Can we go do the workout and then come back and finish that work, right? How can we be effective in our time? And when I say get mad, it's not let's go, commit a crime or do something terrible, but it's get your adrenaline pumping, right? Get fired up about what you're doing because it matters. Everything that we do matters. And I think part of this is that people think they need to be a competitive athlete in a sport when no, you are, whether you're a doctor, you're a CPA, you are a workday warrior. And you need to look at what you're doing as number one, it's valuable, it matters. And how you do anything is how you do everything. So keeping a positive mindset, just saying some days are going to be more stressful than others, but we put on that helmet, right? Just like a football player would to protect themselves or a warrior going into battle. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to have some challenges, but we have our protection on. We ate a good breakfast. We got enough sleep. We drank plenty of water so that when we go in through these stressful moments, these issues of life, we have our protection on. We can go be effective. We can be a warrior. We can come home from that battle, winning the day, 1% better every single day. It really just changes so much for me. I'm trying to answer that question with clarity, but in reality, some people don't want to be told, get mad. Some just want to hear, these are the things you're doing wrong, and this is how you need to do it better. Those are some of my type A people, but I think that everybody, you have an inner warrior, as a woman who is fiercely, traversing paths as a entrepreneur. Everybody's going to battle in some capacity, and I think we all just need to, put on our full armor, just like they would say as a Christian, put on your full armor of God, and let's just go out there and crush whatever it is that's attacking us.
Absolutely. And when you talk about the warrior, it makes me feel that as athletes, while the teenagers and adolescents and even adults, they need to have physical fitness, mental fitness is also very important. So is that part of the work that you do with them? Like to make their mental health stronger? What are some of the things that might help them when they're out in the field?
Mm, Great question. So I go back to sleep because we know too that is a big one. Obviously, sleep is king. When they get more sleep, they are more well rested. They make better choices. They're more mature. Granted, they are children. They're still growing and developing adolescence, but their cognitive abilities are going to be more positive. They're not going to be impaired. So obviously, sleep helping them also, I talk about getting fired up, but then also knowing when it's time to slow down, when it's time to belly breathe, meditate. Some of my 8 to 12-year-old athletes, they are training 30 hours a week sometimes, which is so incredible. And it's a lot of stress on the body. So helping them throughout the day, 2-minute belly breathing sessions where it does reduce the stress and the nervous system, right? We can go out of that, fight or flight, which a lot of them are in constantly. We know that that's not healthy long term, and that puts a lot of stress on their mental health and that pressure, like I talked about earlier, to be perfect and to be the best. I help our athletes understand whether they're 9 or 90. Number one, their performance is not the most important thing. They're a person first. So being a human, find ways to have fun, find ways to just enjoy who you are and what you're doing and take the stress off of being perfect. I think that those are all important things that, even kiddos can benefit from as well, that you don't need to be perfect. You are loved just the way you are. You're doing great. Your performance does not dictate your success in life. So if you do poorly on a test, if you don't do well in a game, that's okay. That's what it's all about. It's about enjoying the process along the way. And a lot of my kids will laugh because they're like, well, but this person said that I'm supposed to do this and they demand this. And yeah, but you're a kid. You have the rest of your life to make mistakes and you're going to make so many of them. And we all kind of laugh about it. And so if mom and dad are on the call too, it kind of just takes the pressure off. And the whole point of life is not to do everything all in one day and to be perfect. It's to enjoy the journey. And fitness is not a destination. It's a journey. And every single component of the journey is valuable because that is all a part of that outcome and that trajectory. So when people cross that finish line, when they're training for a marathon, they don't necessarily think about the race. They think more about the training, the practices, all the things leading up to that day. And that makes that experience that much more enjoyable when you've went through some hardships and trained your mind and your body to overcome a lot of things. So kind of tangential with my response, but I hope that answered it.
It does, and it is so helpful. I'm pretty sure our listeners are going to find so much value in pretty much everything that you have said, Wendi. I want to take maybe a few more minutes to focus on the nutrition part of things. For teenagers, adolescents who are still growing and are in athletics, what are some of the key components of their diet they should be mindful of? Because, eventually they are teenagers too, and they have cravings for the junk food or the unhealthy food. So how do they find that balance?
Excellent question. So number one, adolescents, both male and female, need to have calcium and vitamin D, just because right, they're building bones. Without sufficient calcium and vitamin D, they're going to be more likely to have stress fractures, especially as athletes. And protein is very important as well. Magnesium, zinc, especially for, we're entering flu season, for their immune system function. And just to be clear, a lot of people are like, well, I don't know what that means. I'm not a dietitian. What foods are rich in calcium, vitamin D? So if you actually eat, if I were to share my screen, I would have our performance plate where it's a fruit, a vegetable, a lean protein, a whole grain, and then of course the serving of dairy. So if athletes and non-athletes were to consume 3 balanced meals per day with a couple of snacks in between, they would actually meet most of their nutritional needs. And breakfast being one of the most, it's not the most important meal, but for young children, it's consistent in the research. There's a study, Mahoney et al. 2005, that kids that miss breakfast were unlikely to make up those nutrients later in the day. So that's why I recommend doing eggs, some toast with peanut butter, some banana paired with milk. And again, we don't demonize chocolate milk. So I would rather a kid drink chocolate milk than no breakfast at all. And we know that there's sufficient, protein, calcium, vitamin D to meet their growing and developing needs. So just making it simple. Most kids, parents, they think they have to be perfect, but something is always better than nothing. Eating the rainbow, that's also a critical way to help get in sufficient nutrients, because the more color we have, that's the more pigment, more antioxidants, more nutrients. So making the science, simplified is, did I have a red color today? Did I have something orange, yellow, green, squash, tomatoes? And then of course our high quality proteins. That's actually something that a lot of the parents and families I work with, they really appreciate that. They're like, oh, it's hard to learn these macros and micronutrients, but yeah, just eating a balanced plate, these are good options, having fatty fish a couple of times per week, because we also know vitamin D and omegas are key. But I would recommend, to your point, that's why it's beneficial to work with a registered dietitian, is they can help you develop a meal plan for your whole family that meets your budget needs. Also, you have food allergies or intolerances, what are some good swaps? If you're, lactose intolerant, there's tons of yogurt options that are naturally low in lactose, but then also milk, cow's milk, that is lactose free. So highly recommend checking out my website or even social media platforms, because I share out some of these, whether it be animal or even plant alternatives. For those folks, we do work with both vegan and animal-based athletes. So knowledge is power. And if somebody can hold you accountable to that as well, that's, an added bonus.
Absolutely. And I rely heavily on my registered dietitian colleagues to help my patients who have either diabetes or pre-diabetes or obesity, or who are in athletics and are just struggling with growth. Because the amount of knowledge that you have as a dietitian, that's not where I trained as a medical doctor. So thank you for your partnership in taking care of our patients.
Oh, and thank you for saying that, Dr. Gupta. I really, again, as a dietitian, I appreciate doctors like yourself that are passionate about collaboration, right, and having a multidisciplinary approach for the best interest of the patient and athlete. So thank you so much for all the work that you do, and for the opportunity to speak with you and even be a referral source.
Thank you, Wendi. Thank you again for being on INSPINAR. Are there any closing remarks, any parting messages that you would like to leave for our listeners today?
Yes. So take it one day at a time. If you're new to starting a journey, we're starting 2023 soon. Take it slow and stay in control. Oftentimes people do too much too quick, whether that be with exercise, nutrition, even sleep. Just focus on controlling your controllables and don't put too much pressure on yourself. One day at a time, make a couple of small changes. If you need some help, we are available. And everybody follow Dr. Gupta. She's amazing. And I'm just so grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wendi. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on INSPINAR. Let's reconnect with real life. Let's reconnect with what truly matters. Let's reconnect with health, joy, and efficiency. Let's ungrip our devices and grip life. I'll see you next week. Thank you.